Throughout the intricate web of human existence, spanning corporate boardrooms, legal institutions, and even the intimate spaces of our personal relationships, lurks a particular breed of individual whose very presence can alter the trajectory of your entire life. These are the architects of deception, the masters of psychological warfare who craft their personas with surgical precision. They approach you wearing masks of sincerity, their voices dripping with honeyed words that conceal venomous intentions. Their handshakes are firm, their smiles radiant. Yet beneath this carefully constructed exterior beats the heart of someone who views every human connection as an opportunity for exploitation. This phenomenon, deeply rooted in the strategic manipulation that has shaped empires and toppled kingdoms throughout history, represents one of the most dangerous forms of human interaction you will ever encounter. What makes these individuals particularly treacherous is their ability to camouflage their true nature behind a veil of respectability and charm. They possess an almost supernatural ability to identify your deepest insecurities, your most cherished dreams, and your fundamental psychological needs. Like skilled puppeteers, they begin pulling these invisible strings with such delicate precision that you remain completely unaware of being controlled. They study your behavioral patterns with the intensity of a scientist examining specimens under a microscope, cataloging every reaction, every emotional trigger, every weakness that can be exploited for their benefit. Their methodology is not random or impulsive, but follows a calculated blueprint that has been refined through countless encounters with previous victims. The sophisticated nature of their approach cannot be understated. These psychological predators understand that crude manipulation is easily detected and therefore ineffective in the long term. Instead, they employ what can only be described as emotional alchemy, transforming your natural human desires for connection, recognition, and security into weapons that they wield against you. They present themselves as mentors when you seek guidance, as confidants when you need understanding, and as allies when you face opposition. This chameleon-like ability to adapt their persona to match your current emotional needs makes them virtually impossible to detect until significant damage has already been inflicted. Consider the devastating impact these individuals have had throughout recorded history. Ancient civilizations fell not merely to external armies, but to internal corruption orchestrated by those who understood how to manipulate the levers of power from within. Modern corporations have been brought to ruin not by market forces alone, but by individuals who knew how to play key stakeholders against each other while positioning themselves as indispensable mediators. Personal relationships that could have flourished for decades have been systematically destroyed by those who found profit in creating chaos and then offering themselves as the solution to problems they secretly created. The psychological foundation upon which these manipulators operate is frighteningly sophisticated. They recognize that human beings are fundamentally social creatures who crave validation, fear, isolation, and desperately want to believe in the goodness of others. This natural inclination toward trust, which serves us well in most circumstances, becomes our greatest vulnerability when encountered by someone who views it as nothing more than an exploitable weakness. They understand that most people operate under the assumption that others share their basic moral framework, and they weaponize this assumption to devastating effect. Their initial approach is invariably subtle and non-threatening. They begin by establishing themselves as valuable additions to your life, offering insights that seem profound, assistance that appears genuinely helpful, and companionship that feels authentic. During this honeymoon phase, they are studying you with the intensity of a chess grandmaster analyzing an opponent's opening moves. They note how you respond to praise, what topics make you uncomfortable, which relationships in your life are most important to you, and where your professional or personal ambitions lie. This information becomes the foundation upon which they construct their web of control. The genius of their strategy lies in its gradual implementation. Rather than immediately asserting dominance or making unreasonable demands, they slowly normalize increasingly problematic behaviors. They might begin by offering unsolicited advice that seems helpful but subtly undermines your confidence in your own judgment. They could introduce small conflicts into your existing relationships while positioning themselves as neutral mediators who only want what's best for everyone involved. These incremental boundary violations are so minor individually that you barely notice them, yet collectively they represent a systematic erosion of your autonomy and self-determination. What makes this process particularly insidious is how they manage to make you complicit in your own manipulation. They create situations where you feel compelled to seek their input, rely on their support, or defend their character to others who have begun expressing concerns. By gradually making themselves indispensable to various aspects of your life, they ensure that removing them becomes increasingly difficult and costly. This dependency is not accidental, but represents the deliberate execution of a long-term strategy designed to maximize their control while minimizing your ability to resist. The emotional toll of these relationships cannot be overstated. Victims often describe feeling as though they are losing their minds, questioning memories that were previously crystal clear, and doubting instincts that had served them well throughout their lives. This confusion is not a byproduct of the manipulation, but rather one of its primary objectives. By destabilizing your relationship with reality itself, these individuals make you increasingly reliant on their version of events, their interpretation of situations, and their guidance for navigating challenges that they may have created in the first place. Understanding the full scope of their methodology requires examining how they exploit the fundamental human need for narrative coherence. People naturally want their experiences to make sense, to fit into a logical framework that explains cause and effect in their lives. Skilled manipulators understand this psychological need and deliberately create confusing situations where the only explanations that seem to make sense are the ones they provide. They become your interpreter of reality, and once they occupy that position, their power over you becomes nearly absolute. The social dynamics they create are equally sophisticated. Rather than openly opposing those who might threaten their position in your life, they work to systematically undermine these relationships through carefully planted seeds of doubt, strategically shared confidences, and the gradual construction of alternative narratives that cast doubt on the motives and reliability of those who care about you most. They understand that isolating you from your support network makes you more vulnerable to their influence, while reducing the likelihood that someone will successfully challenge their version of events. Their ability to maintain multiple contradictory narratives simultaneously is perhaps their most remarkable skill. They can present themselves as your greatest champion while secretly working to sabotage your efforts, express deep concern for your well-being while actively contributing to your distress, and claim to value honesty and transparency while operating through layers of deception and misdirection. This compartmentalization allows them to maintain their false persona even when confronted with evidence of their duplicity, as they simply shift to a different narrative framework that explains away inconsistencies while reinforcing their fundamental position of trustworthiness. The financial and professional dimensions of their manipulation often represent the most concrete and measurable aspects of their impact. They may position themselves to benefit from your successes while ensuring they bear none of the risks associated with your failures. This could involve securing positions within your business ventures that provide them with significant influence but limited accountability, or gradually assuming control over financial decisions while maintaining plausible deniability about their true level of involvement. The sophistication of these arrangements often makes it difficult to prove deliberate manipulation, even when the pattern of benefit clearly favors the manipulator at your expense. Recognition represents the first crucial step toward liberation from their influence. However, this recognition is often complicated by the fact that acknowledging their true nature requires admitting that you have been systematically deceived by someone you trusted, possibly for an extended period. This realization can be emotionally devastating and may initially be met with denial or attempts to rationalize their behavior in ways that preserve your existing worldview. Understanding this psychological resistance is essential because it explains why many victims continue to defend their manipulators even after becoming aware of their deceptive practices. The process of developing awareness begins with learning to trust your instincts, even when they contradict the narratives being presented to you. If something feels wrong, if patterns don't make sense, if you find yourself constantly confused or questioning your own perceptions, these may be indicators that you are being subjected to systematic manipulation. The key is learning to value your internal compass even when external voices seem more authoritative or convincing. Observation becomes a critical skill in this process. Rather than focusing solely on what these individuals say, you must begin paying attention to what they do, particularly when they believe they are unobserved. How do they treat service workers, subordinates, or others who have no power to benefit them? What patterns emerge in their relationships with others over time? Do their stated values align with their actual behaviors when no one is watching? These observations can provide crucial insights that help pierce through their carefully constructed facade. Documentation also plays a vital role in maintaining your grip on reality when dealing with sophisticated manipulators. They often rely on your inability to remember exact conversations, specific promises, or particular events to rewrite history in ways that favor their narratives. By keeping detailed records of interactions, promises made, and outcomes achieved, you create an objective foundation that cannot be altered by their revisionist tendencies. This documentation serves not only as protection against gaslighting, but also as evidence should you need to demonstrate patterns of deceptive behavior to others. The concept of boundaries becomes absolutely essential when dealing with these individuals. However, traditional boundary-setting approaches often prove inadequate because sophisticated manipulators are experts at finding ways around explicit limitations. Instead, you must develop what might be called invisible boundaries, lines of protection that they cannot easily identify or circumvent. This involves changing how you respond to their tactics rather than simply telling them what you won't accept. Emotional regulation represents perhaps the most crucial skill in this arsenal of defenses. Manipulators are expert at triggering emotional responses that cloud judgment and make you more susceptible to their influence. They may provoke anger to make you appear unstable, induce fear to make you seek their protection, or stimulate guilt to make you question your right to resist their demands. By developing the ability to recognize these emotional manipulations and respond with measured calm rather than reactive emotion, you deny them one of their most powerful tools. The principle of strategic patience cannot be overemphasized in these situations. While every instinct may scream for immediate confrontation or rapid resolution, sophisticated manipulators actually benefit from rushed decisions and emotional responses. They have prepared for direct challenges and often have contingency plans that turn your attempts at confrontation into evidence of your own instability or unreasonableness. Patience allows you to observe patterns, gather evidence, and plan responses that they have not anticipated. Understanding their psychology also provides significant advantages in developing countermeasures. Most manipulators operate from a position of fundamental insecurity masked by grandiose self-presentation. Their need to control others stems from their inability to tolerate uncertainty or vulnerability in their own lives. This insight can be used strategically by creating situations where their control narratives become untenable without forcing direct confrontations that might escalate the situation unnecessarily. The concept of grey rock technique represents one practical approach to reducing their interest in continuing to manipulate you. This involves making yourself so uninteresting and unreactive that they begin to see you as a poor investment of their manipulative energy. By providing minimal emotional responses, sharing less personal information, and becoming generally less engaging, you can sometimes encourage them to redirect their attention toward more responsive targets. However, this approach must be implemented carefully because sophisticated manipulators may recognize the technique and respond with escalated efforts to regain control. They might increase pressure, create artificial crises, or attempt to provoke stronger reactions through more extreme behaviors. Understanding this potential escalation allows you to prepare for it rather than being surprised when your initial strategies provoke intensified manipulation attempts. Building a support network that understands the dynamics of manipulation becomes crucial for long-term success in dealing with these individuals. However, this network must be carefully constructed because manipulators often work to infiltrate and compromise support systems. The most effective allies are often those who have personal experience dealing with similar situations, professional training in recognizing manipulative behaviors, or sufficient emotional distance from the situation to maintain objectivity when your own perspective becomes clouded. Professional assistance should be considered not as a sign of weakness, but as a strategic advantage in dealing with sophisticated psychological manipulation. Therapists trained in recognizing and treating the effects of emotional abuse can provide valuable perspectives that help you distinguish between normal relationship challenges and systematic manipulation. Legal professionals may be necessary if the manipulation has resulted in financial damage, contractual violations, or other legally actionable behaviors. The recovery process following extraction from a manipulative relationship often involves rebuilding trust in your own perceptions and judgment. This can be particularly challenging because the manipulation may have deliberately targeted your confidence in these areas. Patience with yourself during this rebuilding process is essential, as is understanding that full recovery may take significantly longer than the duration of the manipulative relationship itself. Prevention strategies for future encounters with manipulators involve developing what might be called psychological immune system responses. Just as physical immunity allows your body to recognize and respond to threats more quickly, psychological immunity involves developing pattern recognition skills and response strategies that activate automatically when manipulation attempts are detected. This includes learning to identify common manipulation tactics, understanding your own vulnerabilities that might be exploited, and practicing responses that maintain your autonomy without unnecessarily escalating conflicts. The broader social implications of understanding manipulation cannot be ignored. These individuals often rise to positions of significant influence within organizations, communities, and even governmental structures because their skills at managing perceptions and controlling narratives provide advantages in competitive environments. Recognizing these patterns helps protect not only yourself, but also contributes to creating social systems that are more resistant to manipulation and more supportive of authentic relationships. Educational initiatives that help people recognize and respond to manipulation represent one of the most effective long-term strategies for reducing the power of these individuals. When manipulation techniques are widely understood, they become less effective because potential victims are better prepared to recognize and resist them. This creates a social environment where authentic relationships are valued and rewarded, while manipulative behaviors are quickly identified and discouraged. The technological dimension of modern manipulation also requires attention, as digital communication platforms provide new opportunities for manipulators to control information flow, monitor their targets, and maintain influence across greater distances. Understanding how these technologies can be weaponized helps you protect yourself in digital spaces while maintaining the benefits of modern communication tools. Economic factors often play a significant role in manipulation dynamics, particularly in professional or business relationships. Manipulators frequently position themselves to benefit financially from the relationships they control, sometimes in ways that are not immediately obvious. Understanding these economic dimensions helps you identify potential manipulation attempts and protect your financial interests while maintaining necessary professional relationships. The legal framework surrounding manipulation varies significantly depending on jurisdiction and context, but understanding your rights and available protections is crucial for comprehensive defense. This includes knowing when behaviors cross from merely unethical into illegal territory, what evidence might be required to prove manipulation in legal proceedings, and what resources are available to victims of serious manipulation. Cultural factors also influence how manipulation manifests and how it can be effectively countered. Different societies have varying levels of tolerance for indirect communication, hierarchical relationships, and individual autonomy, all of which affect how manipulative behaviors are perceived and addressed. Understanding these cultural dimensions is particularly important in multicultural environments where manipulation techniques might be disguised as cultural differences. The intergenerational transmission of manipulative behaviors represents another important consideration, as children raised in environments dominated by manipulation often struggle to recognize healthy relationship patterns later in life. Breaking these cycles requires conscious effort to develop new relationship skills and often benefits from professional guidance in understanding what normal, healthy interactions actually look like. Recovery and growth following experiences with manipulation often lead to increased resilience and wisdom that benefit not only the individual, but also their future relationships. Many people who successfully navigate these challenges report becoming better at recognizing authentic relationships, more confident in their own judgment, and more skilled at maintaining healthy boundaries in all areas of their lives. The ultimate goal is not to become cynical or distrustful of all human relationships, but rather to develop the discernment necessary to distinguish between authentic connections and manipulative ones. This balance requires ongoing attention and practice, as the skills needed to protect yourself from manipulation must be maintained without allowing them to prevent you from forming meaningful relationships with trustworthy individuals. Understanding that manipulation will always exist in human societies helps maintain realistic expectations while working to minimize its impact on your own life. The goal is not to eliminate all risk, but to develop sufficient skills and awareness that you can navigate complex social environments while maintaining your autonomy, dignity, and authentic relationships with those who deserve your trust.